All right, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking to the creative team behind the second volume two of Beast of the Black Hand. It's some local creators. Ron Marz is writer. Paul Harding, who's a sculptor and artist. It's his concept. It's a horror adventure tale set in the days just after the First World War. The first volume is awesome, and I'm sure the second volume is going to be even better. So let's bring them in and find out more about it. Oh, there we go. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey Chad, how are you?
Great, Chad.
First off, Paul, welcome. Welcome to your first time.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Hello again,
Matthew
Chad.
and Ron.
It's like a family reunion for most of us.
It really kind of is.
All right. So before we get in, let me talk with Paul. I like to ask, everybody how they got into comics and how they, got into what they were doing. So how did you get into comics, and how did you also get into the whole sculpting of these statues and figures?
Well, I've been into comics since I was, a young teenager. I think it really got to be a big obsession probably around 88, 89 when the Batman movie came out. So I became a huge Batman fan at that point, and then after that, I discovered the X-Men books and guys like Jim Lee and things like that, which was pretty exciting for me as a kid. As far as the action figures go, I was a fan of those since I was probably 4 years old. Probably age 4 was when I bought my first one, or age 5, and it's just been a fun obsession ever since. And I'm, at some point in my late 20s, early 30s, I was able to turn it into a career.
Nice.
How do you sorry, Chad. How do you actually break in doing that, Paul? I've always wondered. I've never actually asked you that. Like, how do you start making action figures?
Well, I had an interest in sculpting, and I knew action figures were made that way, but that was all I knew. And I think around 1994, when I was in high school, I started sculpting a little more, looking at the Jurassic Park making of book. So I learned a little bit about clay at that point, but I had no idea how to break in. I didn't know you could break in. The only thing I knew was Hasbro, and even McFarlane was starting to do stuff. So essentially, if I wasn't living in New York City, I wouldn't have been able to break in. And I just kind of met the right people at the right time to score my first design gig, where I designed a series of figures, but for a small toy company. And that toy company introduced me to a real sculptor who taught me the shortcuts. So it was just got to be in the right place.
I remember it was a couple years ago at the Jack Kirby birthday. You did kind of like an impromptu sculpting of the Hulk for the crowd there.
Right.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do things like that.
So, so tell us a little, Paul, since it's your concept. Tell us a little bit about Beast of the Black Hand and kind of what influenced the book.
Well, probably like all good comics should start. It began with a reason to just draw and sculpt what I wanted to. And I think I learned that from Mike Mignola, who I saw at I saw him speaking at Lake Placid Film Festival, I think a long time ago. And that's what he said. He said the only reason he did Hellboy was because he wanted to make monsters. And that kept echoing in my head, and I wanted to make monsters as well. So you know, I started thinking of ways to do this, and I was speaking to a writer who I can't remember who it was, and he said, "Paul, you need a narrative." And it was from that point where I just started thinking about what characters I could use, and then I got into the World War I aspect, which is an interest for me, and then I happened to know Ron at the time too, and I kind of threw the idea at him, and he said, "Let's run with it."
You know, I was obviously, you know, let's do monsters, Paul said, and I was like, okay, I like monsters, but you know, really, it was to a great extent pretty well figured out. You know, Paul sells himself short, I think, in that, you know, oh, I just wanted to do some monsters. Well, he had all of the rest of this stuff in place, including the cast, really, which turns out to be mostly real people, mostly actual historical figures. Oswald Raynor is the British secret agent who was kind of the alpha hero of the story, and his sidekick is Biffy Dunderdale. They were both real people. Biffy Dunderdale was a British secret agent and was one of the people that Ian Fleming based James Bond on. And then the other actual historical figure that's on the heroic side of thing is Henry Johnson, who lived part of his life in Albany, Troy area, and is a World War I Medal of Honor winner. If you're driving in the right part of Albany, you will pass Henry Johnson Boulevard. There's a road named for him here. So he was, he was a World War I African American hero for his actions in France. So most people in the book are real people. Now, as far as we know, they didn't actually fight monsters, but we can't prove that they didn't. So.
That's up for debate, I think.
Excuse me. And how did you get Matthew involved?
Well, we were at what was it, Seattle? We were at a convention. Yeah, we were at a convention together, and Ron and I were like coming back from a dinner or something, and Ron was basically like, "What are you doing right now? You want to draw some monsters?" I mean, Ron and I have worked together for years. We've done a bunch of projects together, kind of going back to our time together at CrossGen. And Paul's a good friend of mine as well. I used to live like around the corner from Paul. So, any excuse to work with my friends, I'm always down for that. But also it's a fun story. And yeah, you get to draw monsters, and Ron keeps threatening to put more motorcycles and horses in these stories because I hate drawing motorcycles and horses. But it's like, really, these are the fun jobs for me when you get to do a fun story and you get to work with your friends, and your friends are just ridiculously talented people like Ron and Paul. And what do? You're not going to say no to that. So
yeah.
And when this started, and the fact that we all lived about 30 minutes from each other was, until Matt for some reason wanted to move away and live with his wife.
Yeah.
Married. Instead of being there, obviously a poor decision on his part. This stuff is more fun when you can actually get together and sit around and have a beer and kick around ideas and I've made the example before. It's this is like putting on a show in your backyard with your friends. This is and the fact that we weren't really pitching it around to other publishers. We just went to Ominous with it and kickstarted it. This is just there's nobody looking over our shoulders telling us what to do for this thing. It's just us doing what we want.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Paul, how does the creative process work between the three of you?
I thought Paul was going to say, well, really not very well.
Yeah. I was just gonna say barely, and then leave it up to you, Chad, to finish.
Fill in the blanks.
Yeah. No, just the initial concepts and characters come from me, and the major story beats. But I leave almost all the heavy lifting to Ron and Matt. I mean, Ron is a professional storyteller, with the written word. Matt is a professional storyteller, not only with the written word, but as a visual sequential artist. So, it would have been ridiculous for me to try to do this by myself. Probably would have never gotten done. Probably would have looked terrible. So I was lucky enough to have friends that were into it. So I do some character designs, some monster designs. Then Matt basically does his take on those. Sometimes he will take a character that hasn't been designed yet and just do his own thing on it. It's just fun for me to watch the process play out.
Ron or Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I just do what Ron and Paul tell me. It's just safer that way.
Yeah, right.
No, it's fun. Actually, one of the things Paul is, oddly, considering my sort of brief association with Hellboy, I'm like not particularly good with monsters. I love drawing monsters. I'm not sort of a naturally gifted monster designer. There's a real art to designing monsters that involves sort of tapping into the psyche of people and shapes that make people uncomfortable and things like that, which is just not a natural part of my artistic DNA. I'm more into drawing people in overcoats because I'm all about the overcoats. But Paul is phenomenal at designing these monsters. So I actually really kind of prefer Paul to do the design first, and then I will kind of put my own spin on it, which usually involves putting more shadows on it and maybe a couple of extra spiky things. I put like little spiky things on everything,
and maybe an overcoat or two.
And yeah, all the monsters in Volume 2 will have overcoats. But I mean that's one of the really interesting things about this project. I mean, I've done projects where like I am solely in charge of the artistic design of everything, but to have a gifted designer sort of as one of the creators of this project is amazing and a lot of fun. And the monsters, if you like the way the monsters look, I mean 99.9% of that is down to a Paul Harding design.
Mm-hmm. To me, the process is just we make up stuff. Paul makes up stuff, and then I make up more stuff, and then Matt sort of makes it real on the page. This is probably the most amount of freedom you can have doing a project, because really the only bosses we have are us, and so we're just kind of taking the ball and running with it. And yesterday, or maybe it was even this, I don't know, was it this morning? Somebody mentioned, a two-headed monster, and Paul and I were both like, wait a minute, two-headed monster? We need a two-headed monster in this story. So
I never thought of that.
So it's not out of the question that when this thing is done, there'll be a two-headed monster, and it's just because somebody made an offhand comment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that simple.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So let's talk about the Kickstarter and the second volume of the book. Kind of, where does it pick up, and kind of can somebody give like a summary of what happened in the first volume and where the second volume picks up?
Well, it picks up pretty much right after, and they're thrown into a new adventure.
Yeah, a few months. Volume 2 takes place a few months after Volume 1, and Volume 1
Okay.
Introduced Oswald Raynor and Biffy Dunderdale, Olita Marchand, who was a French hello girl, which is what the women were called, who were the phone operators during World War One, and Henry Johnson. And the overall the specific villain in Volume One was Maria Rasputin, who obviously was also a real person. Because Oswald Raynor, the Volume One opens with Oswald Raynor assassinating Rasputin, and as far as we can tell, that's who actually did kill Rasputin. Except for coming back to life with magic, the Rasputin scene that opens Volume One is pretty accurate in terms of how it all went down and the room that it took place in and all that. So you're getting your history lesson right up front, kids. And then Volume Two picks up with the evil cabal of the Black Hand, having unleashed monsters across Eastern Europe, and our intrepid band of heroes fighting them. First chunk of the book takes place in Berlin, and obviously Berlin in the 20s had some proto-fascists running around. So they play a part in the story. There's new monsters. There's a new hero called the Teutonic Knight. And there are bigger and better monsters in Volume 2.
One of them might have two heads.
One of them, yeah, one of which two heads.
So
is there? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Germany in the 1920s was kind of like the Wild West. There was warlords controlling small armies, and this is just true. So this was an ideal situation, and that's how I planned it from the beginning. It was just a crazy time in Europe. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all I was gonna bookend Ron's point with.
So what the Kickstarter? It just started a couple of days ago. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Last week.
I think it's been up for less than a week now.
Yeah.
So we've got a good chunk of time to go, and we're close to $10,000. So we're pretty confident that this gets funded and we produce it and make another lovely hardcover, oversized graphic novel. I'm really that was one of the real attractions for me the first time through, is that we did a big fat hardcover, very much like a French or Belgian album in terms of the format, and people have really responded to it. And I know whenever I have them at a convention or something like that, it's the thing that catches people's eye at the table, because it's a much bigger package than we're used to in American comics for kind of a one big chunk of story.
Yeah, it's a fun format to be in. Yeah, I think there's a little delay on my end.
Yeah,
but the format is really exciting to see.
There's a delay for some reason. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi. But it's fun to see the visuals in a format that large, and Matt really, does a great job with it.
It's nerve-wracking. I can't hide as much stuff.
Yeah,
because it's so big. But it's a good format. I've always wanted to do something in this format, something that was a larger sort of, like Ron said, like the French or Belgian sort of more album style, because I have always been a big fan of that particular format, and so it's interesting to kind of suddenly be working in it, and I think we had a lot of fun with it in the first volume, and I think we'll be having even more fun with it in the second volume, sort of as we've gotten more of a feel for it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So
and they look really good on your shelf. Just got to say, it's a very Ominous did a very, very, very nice job with the additions of these. They're just really gorgeous.
Yeah. So this volume takes a darker turn in the story, and it can. We called the first volume a horror tale, and it was, I would say, but this one really leans into the genre and takes a slightly darker turn. So we're excited to take this adventure.
I think anytime you have the undead Red Baron in your story, call it a horror. You call it horror.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paul's right. We've talked about making this, as the situation gets worse, as our villainous Black Hand cabal starts to take more control over the continent, things get worse for our heroes. So it's definitely going to be Matt will get a chance to do more shadows on the pages, even more than before. Which
I'm always down for that. Yeah. Can everything take place at night in a blackout with no moon?
Well, the opening scene's the opening scene, which is up on the Kickstarter page, is it's night. There's a
it is
crescent moon. So, and then we wreck a church.
Yeah. Because why not?
Yeah. My demand for this book was to wreck a church, and Ron came through, and Matt came through really well.
All those
iconoclast that he is.
All those bricks, so many bricks.
Well, Matt will be happy to know that our motorcycle army that we have coming up in this book can be drawn in silhouette. Good.
But as long as they're in silhouette.
However, they are horses riding the motorcycles. So,
jeez. This is actually what it's like working with them. It's like the scripts are just them torturing me. How can we torture Matt today?
So have there been any challenges you faced so far with the Kickstarter, given that it's a strange time with the economy and all that?
Honestly, I feel like people are increasingly kind of turning to Kickstarter and things, different Indiegogo, things like that. I mean, not just the creators though. I mean, I think the readers have too. I mean, we had this long period where there just were not new comics in the shop, and I think Kickstarter as a financing and a distribution system, I think really kind of filled that gap for a while. And it'll be interesting to see sort of long term how that develops. But I think I can't speak to the other guys, but I mean I think it's been going well so far. I think the audience likes things like this where you can be more directly involved in getting the comics that you want to see made.
Yeah, I think obviously crowdfunding, particularly Kickstarter, is a more and more viable option for getting your project done. And not that it has to be, the singular option. A lot of stuff that gets kickstarted and, self-published essentially, or like us working through Ominous Press, you work with a publishing partner to get it done. Then the material can wind up somewhere else. Another, a publisher picks it up to do single issues or, whatever the format is. But this is a great way to get you to be able to do the thing you want to do in the way you want to do it. and people, I think, are more and more supportive of it. I really feel like the industry as a whole is evolving in terms of how we do stuff. It's obviously not just the direct market anymore by any means. It's all a segment of the pie. It's direct market, it's Kickstarter, it's OGNs into big bookstores, it's digital. Any way you can get material out there is valid now. And I think the direct market is always going to be the backbone of what we do. But it's by no means only thing that we do anymore. That you can see publisher, I like DC in particular, you can see moving in the direction of doing more OGNs especially for young adult audiences, and doing more digital first content. That's a recognition that the marketplace is evolving, and that they'd rather be out in front of it rather than trailing behind. So doing stuff in all of those formats is completely valid. I look at it like a big smorgasbord table, and you serve things up in as many different ways as you can, so that you can hit as many different audiences as you can.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we're doing this time on the campaign is, in addition to the oversized hardcover, we're also doing a set of single issues with covers by Matt, as a 4-issue miniseries. If you want Beast of the Black Hand as a 4-issue miniseries, that's part of the campaign now. And so is and so are a number of variant covers by all sorts of wondrous artists who have agreed to come in and help us. So it's the same story, but you can buy it in any different package you want. You can buy it digitally, hardcover, single issues. So people get to choose. People get to choose how they consume the product.
So, is there anything else that I may have missed that you wanted to anybody wanted to mention about about the project, or about the book?
It'll be out in December. I don't think we said that. So
No, I don't think we have.
The Kickstarter campaign runs for like another 3 weeks, I think. And then by the time it's written and drawn and sent off to print, and we get it back from the printer, and it gets packaged up and fulfilled to everybody that pledges, December is the target to have the book in everybody's hands. Hopefully we actually can have it done before that, but when you do something like this, you are sort of at the mercy of the printer schedules. And if you end up printing the book overseas, that's there's a literal slow boat from Asia that brings cases and cases of your books over.
Yeah.
And then they hit the West Coast, and then they get trucked to the East Coast. So it's everything takes time, but we're gonna get the guts of it done as soon as possible, and have it ready to go.
Yep, and regarding the story, even though this campaign is for Volume 2, you'll have the opportunity to catch up and buy Volume 1 as well. So this is a great starting place.
Yep. If you weren't one of these 666 people that pledged to the first campaign, you can get volume 1 together.
Perfect.
Actually, when the first campaign funded, we were sort of hoping that we were closing in on right at the end of the campaign at midnight. We were closing in on 666 backers, and we're thinking, oh my God, can we actually end up with 666 backers for a book called Beast of the Black Hand? And then we got to 666. With a couple minutes to go, we got 666, and so of course then we were all sitting around going, oh my God, I hope nobody else pledges.
Yeah.
we got to end on 6. So that's where it ended. And it turned out to be a local guy that we've met at Albany Con and signings at any of the various stores around here. So it was a local guy that ended up with copy 666, which I think we actually handed to him at a signing and signed it to him
right
as pledge number 666.
Nice.
It was pretty.
So look for a future volume.
Very cool.
Look for a future volume of the story to be called Sign of the Beast. I think that'll fit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, volume 3 is going to be called Pledge Number of the Beast.
Very likely.
Now, Matt, Johnny Chaos just finished up last week, correct?
Yes, it did. Last Wednesday. Launching a new one tomorrow as of this recording. Launching on Wednesday. New serial arch nemesis that I'm writing and drawing. Ron's already seen it. Paul hasn't seen it yet because apparently I hate Paul. But no, Ron's a good editorial sounding board. If something goes horribly wrong, I kind of count on Ron to say, Matt, this sucks, because he's not afraid to tell me when I suck, which is true. But so that launches Wednesday. That's a 6-part story, and that's just something I'm doing I'm doing on the weekends. But that's sort of my own thing, which is a lot of fun, and not to try to steal any thunder from the Beast of the Black Hands thing. But I think next in a week or so we're going to be releasing a digital edition of it to basically as many platforms as we can. So hopefully that will continue to build. And there are no horses or motorcycles or cars. No cars. Nobody drives in my universe. No cars. They just walk everywhere in long overcoats. But yeah, so that launches this week, and I'm very excited about it. I think that the first few sort of people who have read it have really liked it. But that's as far as side projects go, that's been a lot of fun to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I read it. I read it last night, and it was one of those things where, you read it and then you smack yourself in the head and go, well, why didn't I think of that? Like it's one of those glorious, obvious concepts that works, because it's one of those that you're jealous of. Like, I should have thought of this and not let Matt do it. But it's really good. I as much as I enjoyed Johnny Chaos, I think I might like this one a little bit better so far.
We'll see if I can actually land the ending, but it's fun. I sent the ending to Johnny Chaos to Ron, basically just to make sure I didn't.
Now, Paul, I see that you've been. Now, Paul, I see that you've been. Are there just designs you've been doing for Marvel in the '70s statues?
Now, what was the question?
I saw on your Facebook that you've been posting the Marvel '70s. Looks like models and stuff. Is that an actual line, or is that just something you've been toying around with?
Well, it started as a quarantine personal project, but let's say the future is bright for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I mean, I think I've hit about 50 characters, all basically from the 1970s Marvel universe. A lot of them were just homages to the characters themselves and to the style that they wore. Some were redesigns where, not that I thought their costumes were bad in the 70s, it's just that I had, in some cases I had no interest in sculpting those characters that way, so I thought it would serve them better as a redesign. So I created this essentially a whole universe of characters that reflect their 70s counterparts in a sort of a realistic way.
They're really gorgeous, Paul. I absolutely love seeing those characters. Because those were the versions of those characters when I was a kid, and you just some of your best stuff yet. So
thank you.
And Ron, do you have anything since we last talked?
Yes, and I can't tell you about any of them.
Okay, that's fine.
we keep a lot of secrets in this little group.
Yeah, there's
that's
so many
fine.
secrets.
There's stuff, but I can't tell you what it is. But when I can tell you, I'm happy to come back on and tell you what it is and show you some stuff. But yeah, there's interesting things afoot for the end of the year.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk, and hope the Kickstarter goes well. And I encourage everybody to check it out and back the project. I will include the link in the video. And stay safe and stay healthy, guys. And talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Everybody stay healthy.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
You guys too.
Yep.
Look at